Business Spotlight, brought to you by Cross Rhythms and Baba Baboon.
I'm Sonya Farrell. This is Business Spotlight in partnership with Cross Rhythm City Radio and Baba Baboon. Joining me in the studio this week, we've got the delightful, the fantastic, I'm going to big him up, Usman Shah from Abzorbed Group. Hello, Usman, how are you?
Hi, Sonya. Thank you so much for welcoming me today.
Before we go anywhere, Usman, I'd just like you to explain what the Abzorbed Group actually is.
Sure. So Abzorbed Group is made up of two companies at this moment in time. Maybe in the future we'll have more, but I think two is enough for me. So Absorbed Events is one of the companies that we established in 2015, and in 2012 we established Absorbed IT Solutions. So Absorbed IT Solutions has been running a little bit longer and is the bigger of the two companies, but the event side it's been very much, a passion of mine as well. It allows me to be creative, etc. And we've done some phenomenal events in the city, outside the city. But today's exercise is just to talk a little bit more about the Absorbed IT company, because we'll be here all day otherwise. So we're talking about all the different companies.
Well, that's an opportunity to come back then, Usman.
Yeah, absolutely.
We always say that.
There's some really cool stuff to talk about, stories.
A lot of cool stuff, I can imagine. I'm sure you've got some great stories as well and some insights into the events industry.
Absolutely.
But we'll stick with IT, like you mentioned today, for Business Spotlight. Now, the IT industry, you mentioned there, how long the company's actually been going as well, Absorbed IT Solutions. So in your experience as a business owner and seeing how the IT is forever evolving and changing and technology and everything, would you say has been some of the main changes you can think of that has happened over the years in the industry?
I think if we go back in time a little bit and make it, from an understanding point of view, if we go back to the Apple phone as an example. Yeah. Because prior to the Apple phone, if you wanted something smart, it was known as the BlackBerry phone. The BlackBerry phone was basically your email business phone, etc. And all the rest of the phones were just normal phones, like you'd SMS, etc. If we go back in time, we were talking about pages, for business, etc. So as you can imagine, the Apple phone, it wasn't the first smartphone. There was companies like HTC and a few other companies who wanted, already had that market sort of space, but they accelerated the whole smartphone sort of thing with their marketing, etc., which we all know Apple is very, very, very good at. Yeah. So I think the core fundamental change was the consumerization of IT and how computing typically was a computer, the hardware on a computer was, readily available, etc., in terms of the processing power, etc. Now you had that in your hand, or into a tablet, and that consumerization of IT basically effectively affected the transition of what we call now as basically digital transformation. So that was in the early days. These words weren't basically invented then, but it was the start of the digital sort of transformation. So that basically became a major game changer in terms of how we basically consumed IT.
And how we communicate.
Yeah, absolutely, as well.
I think it opened up, like you've just mentioned there, it opened up so many different doors and so many different ways of consuming information through, like you say, not a pager or anything like that, but an actual mobile phone that most of us have always got in our pocket or our hand, haven't we?
Absolutely. So then the next basically major change was cloud computing, which was basically huge. Like there's a massive change, a shift of dynamic. Instead of people having loads of computers locally, etc., they moved them over into data centers, which effectively is having your same computers in the cloud, which the cloud is really the same computers but in a data center, which is a big building with loads and loads of computers doing virtualization and the same computing power, but effectively you no longer have to support that locally in terms of your sort of network sort of infrastructure. So that whole adoption of cloud computing again changed everything, how they basically communicate with each other, etc., and building more resilience and the cost, etc. There was so many cost savings to move over to the cloud, having to basically upkeep all these hardware, keep refreshing the hardware every 2 or 3 years. So there's something called Moore's Law. Okay. And so Moore's Law, effectively, there's basically every year, it kind of like something will speed up, something will change in terms of the amount of memory that you're using. It just keeps getting larger and bigger and bigger. So kind of following that Moore's Law sort of scenario, it's just accelerated massively.
So I'm just going to ask you there, because the cloud, I still hear, and people saying, but what is the cloud? Still now, I hear it. So how would you sort of simplify it?
So the really easy way to describe this, and everyone will really understand it, because, whether you're old or young, you're either on Instagram, you're on TikTok, or you're on Facebook. These applications basically are all running regardless of what device they are, etc., they are running on that device, but you aren't actually physically installing that application as how it runs other than the back end. So that cloud computing is all driven by applications, which are actually the same software that was installed on servers or PCs to run that application, and you would be connected over the internet. So the cloud is now connecting over the internet again to a data center. So Facebook, Instagram, etc., are just hundreds of computers basically driving that service to you, me, as consumers. So that's what the cloud is, effectively. It's loads of computers in a big building running all the applications, Facebook, Instagram, etc. Make it relevant so people understand it, WhatsApp. Delivering that over the internet. So that's what cloud is, effectively. And in my head, when I first looked at cloud computing, I was like, where is this cloud? There's so much, like you said, ambiguity around it. There's not enough education around it or what cloud computing was. Unless you were really technical, you would understand it. Otherwise, you wouldn't understand it.
Yeah. And would you say, then, with that and with all the, like, again, technology forever evolving, whether it's the cloud thing or the way we consume, technology or even bringing into it like AI and everything like that, does this then bring in, are these sort of assets, should I say, which can contribute to cybersecurity and the effects or the implications of cybersecurity?
So basically, let's say, for example, myself or yourself, we're an IT manager. When you've got something in front of you, it's easier to control to a certain degree. You can see it, etc. But what these sort of technologies have done, cloud computing or, your own devices, mobile phones, tablets, laptops, etc., they've created new challenges. New layers of, how do we control X, Y, Z, etc., when they're not on our network anymore, and so on and so forth. What data are they accessing? How are they accessing that data? Are they prone to basically X, Y, Z unless they have these certain technologies in place to, lock down the security, etc.? So it brings a whole new dynamic of cybersecurity challenges, which massively affect the business. Or businesses. Yeah,
and I was just going to say, as a business owner or business owners out there who are listening, where do you go? Where do you turn when you are looking for, like, okay, we've got cybersecurity, we've heard of cybersecurity. Someone might have a really good system in place or protection in place, and there might be somebody else, on the next step who is not really sure but doesn't know where to turn. What are the easy sort of process or steps you could say to a business owner, really, to just be aware of things, but also, to safeguard themselves?
Yeah, I mean, if we use, again, some simple sort of examples, if you want to win a tournament, whether it's cricket or football or, basketball, etc., you've got to go through a whole training process before you get anywhere close to the tournaments and being in a position of winning. The same sort of situation with a business. You've got to train and understand basically the processes it's going to take, the qualifications it's going to take to become cyber resilient.
Yep.
So as business owners, I think a lot of the education it falls kind of apart is because that training isn't designed for layman terms, and then people get confused, X, Y, Z, etc. So there's, easy way I could just say is you could turn towards businesses that are obviously cybersecurity aware, etc., and help businesses, etc., around that. But in reality, the truth is, there's frameworks out there, compliance frameworks, which are stepping stones.
Okay.
One step at a time, a business can become compliant with a certain framework. Then they know they're adhering to a sort of process where if someone asks them, whether it's a cyber assurance company or another company is asking them, how are you doing the security? There's something to benchmark it against.
Yeah.
So these compliance frameworks have been around for a long time, and one of the main ones for small businesses, especially, as well as large businesses, it's the first stepping stone. It's called Cyber Essentials.
Yes.
And Cyber Essentials Plus, and it's a government-backed sort of framework. So it's obviously a standard that is recognised. You can do it every year, and then you can present that to whoever you're working with, saying that your data is relatively safe because we're obviously doing these practices, and look, we've got this accreditation.
Yeah. So I suppose from what you're saying there as well is it's okay business owners being aware or implementing certain things. But I think for me, from what I'm getting from that as well, Usman, is to keep it sustainable and to keep on top of the game, it does come back to education.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the key thing. And a lot of the conversations before, it was all about being reactive. Now it's coming from, people realising that they're dealing with so much more information. and they're responsible. There's GDPR, there's NIST, there's all these compliance frameworks that you have to, data protection it was called before, that you have to be adhered to. So you're responsible. So there's the body in the UK called the ICO, the Information Basically Commission Officer, and they will fine people who basically XYZ don't adhere to these sort of frameworks, or don't take that sort of precaution of managing people's data, etc. So it's really important from an educational point. You're not reactive. You don't wait till a ransomware hits your business, or basically you find out that someone has done such and such a thing, but because we didn't do the compliance framework, we would have spotted that, but we've got no framework in place. So they're becoming more proactive and started to slowly invest in it. But again, it comes down to that education. Unless the conversations and IT managers having that conversation with the board, with CFO properly, in the non-techie sort of language, they're not going to understand it. All they're going to understand, it's a cost to my business, we're not making any profit. What they're not really understanding, the really important bit is, if, for example, a breach happens, your brand's going to be dented, business is going to go down, and you're going to be in the news for all the wrong reasons. And we've seen this so many times before, which, companies lose confidence. They won't deal with you because they don't want to be associated with companies which have negative press.
And it can be not only financially, like you said, your brand, but financial implications there.
With the fines that potentially can happen from the ICO. So recovering from that is really hard. And I've seen so many examples of businesses fold purely because the fines are so much. They just couldn't cope. And
then again, on the other side of that as well, suppose if a business, whether, something does happen and they are fine, but they keep going and, they survive it and they carry on. But then I suppose staff might start to question things and might not feel confident in staying with that company.
And a lot of times we're finding, obviously, especially with the mid-markets or enterprise, because the IT manager or basically whoever's responsible, the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, etc., they become the scapegoats. They could have basically been pushing for XYZ to be implemented for many, many years, but because of the cost involved, etc., they've been ignored. But when something's happened, like a breach, a ransomware, or whatever sort of breach has happened, which is affecting their business, it's like, well, we've had internal discussions, etc., and they just fire a person. So it's like a blame game. So that's a different politics dynamic altogether. But when it comes down to the education, it should be a whole approach where when you're making any decisions to implement any particular technology, it should be a whole discussion as opposed to the IT manager's decision or so on and so on decision.
And I think, one of the ways in which helping to educate companies, again, whether it's somebody who is quite sort of technical savvy or not at all and is trying to learn and be more aware, is by holding or attending events. And the reason I come on to that is we're not going to go into, like you say, absorbed events at this stage, in this interview. It is all about IT. But something happened quite recently in Staffordshire, Usman, which was CyberCon Staffordshire, which Abzorbed IT Solutions, organised, put on at the University of Staffordshire at the Catalyst building, and was attended, some good attendees there. You had, I believe, around 70 delegates as well. Now, but the point why I'm mentioning that event, because it was about education. I'll be totally honest, I was there, I was at the event, and I'm not that technical savvy, but I did sit and I did listen to all the speakers, and I did actually pick up quite a few things, because there was some things that were explained in layman's terms. But for you, obviously, yes, you were behind the event, but why do you think those events are particularly important for business owners and also maybe educational establishments to attend?
I think it comes back down to the education, but more specifically, it was, for me, I'm very passionate about basically local, the Staffordshire region. Obviously, I've been born and bred here, etc. But I've been very fortunate with the business that I own. I've been able to travel up and down the country, some really high profile sort of events in London, Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, abroad as well. Obviously, I've been to Bucharest, basically, and other countries, obviously in Europe as well, Germany. And just, I've seen these high profile sort of events and the benefit that they were providing. So for me, it was like a big dream to, establish something in Staffordshire where local businesses, and there's so many of them, very large establishments, enterprises, SMBs, etc., who could really benefit from an event which is all about basically explaining some of the threats that you're not even aware about, whether they're insider threats, whether it's different facets of the cybersecurity, because it's such a broad, large sort of topic that, you know, it covers and so many layers. So it's all about educating it in a way where not only the technical people would be satisfied from the businesses local, but also business owners.
Yeah.
And I think it's really crucial for the business owners to understand why cybersecurity is not like a small deal anymore. It's a big deal because you're processing so much information. And as a target, we're finding the growth and the trends, which we'll obviously lead on to further, is that SMBs, smaller businesses, are becoming more of a target because there's so much more of them. Yeah. 90% of the UK is made of small SMB businesses. Yeah. So if you're a criminal, you're going to target the 90% as opposed to the big 10% who can spend a large amount of money on cybersecurity, etc. Because there's much more money involved in you know, these cyber gangs, and we're talking billions. We're not talking just millions. They're very, very well organised gangs that have been around for a long time, and they're usually outside of Europe in Europe, and then attacking the UK. There's very you know, that's how they get away with a lot of the stuff, because they won't target people in their own country because their police forces, etc., or the FBI or whichever, you know, sort of security sort of organisation locally will find them quicker. Yeah. So if they're doing their attacks abroad, it's much easier for them to basically get away with it. Yeah. And stay anonymous.
Yeah, so you mentioned there as well, you know, certain trends and everything. But what are trends that are happening at the moment?
I think the biggest one, I think both of us will probably agree, is, do you remember back in the day when we used to get them emails from people in Nigeria who were claiming basically going to give us millions of pounds that they've been inherited because the father was the king of Brunei or whatever he was, or the king of Nigeria, etc. And then people used to fall for these sort of phishing emails. So phishing attacks have become so much more layered, so much more clever, so much more complicated. And using AI, sometimes they're able to even, you know, mimic you. So they'll send an email that looks like your, you know, the language that you use to your own employees because they've hijacked your email to a certain degree and use that in a way to phish. And someone calls spear phishing attacks are very targeted. And then phishing, like, you know, generally phishing attacks are just like very like DHL, Amazon, with the text messages that you get, and you know you've never even had a delivery, or you don't need to click on this link to pay for the customs for something that you're not ordered. But effectively what you do is you end up putting your details in there. Next minute you know your bank account's empty.
And it's funny, isn't it, how, well, it's not funny, but it's how we sometimes absorb information. And I think as well, you know, we've mentioned technology and phones and internet and all the different ways we communicate, whether it's in business or personally. You're getting messages or emails all the time. And sometimes just that one slip or second of your mind.
It doesn't take much. It's like, I mean, I've been fooled many times myself, and I'm in the industry, and it's getting harder and harder to, like, there's words like deep fake, you know, is becoming a big issue. So in effect, they can clone your voice and, you know, call you from this like number, and it's your actual voice. So, and then though it's a robot AI trying to drive, if you're not savvy, you're an elderly person or someone with, you know, not the education, that, like I said, you could be having a million things on your mind and it slips up that you think it's your bank account ringing you or something, and then they're asking for your account number and, you know, your PIN code and stuff. You're like, okay, what's going on here? And before you know it, you've actually just, you know, given too much information, and it's a bit too late then at that stage.
Yeah. Is there anything that, like you say, you know, it can happen to anyone really, whether you're in the industry or not. Is there any sort of tips or awareness, things, you know, that people can just be aware of to maybe preempt or to not fall for anything like that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, it comes back down to training ourselves regularly. Because if we do, like, you know, training sessions every 3 or 6 months as opposed to every 12 or, you know, 2 years, we're going to be a bit more aware. And so that constant sort of feed. So if you're a teacher and you've stopped teaching for a year, you're going to be a little bit rusty with your education. So it's our job as a responsibility to keep, you know, learning. Keep consistently learning. So whether it's 3 months, 6 months, so if there's a cybersecurity event, a small one, that you can you know, go to the chambers or something that we've put on, etc. These sort of events rejuvenate that sort of energy and make you aware about what's going on, making you more savvy, and then you can translate that back into your business or, you know, the friends and family that you talk to, really, because it affects us all. Like, it's not just businesses, it affects families as well, and real people. Like, they get, you know, their savings get attacked or whatnot. It's, you know, it can really be detrimental to people's lives.
And again, you know, I think the main sort of element or point that's come out of this interview, Usman, is education. and that awareness, and like you say, refreshing. And I think as business owners, you really, I think it's always a good thing to refresh yourself on different things and to learn and keep learning.
Yeah, of course.
You're a business owner. You've been in the industry for many a year now, but surely yourself, you believe in that because of how much you've grown and expanded in yourself.
Absolutely. And even like myself, every year I'm constantly investing in myself, just making sure I'm savvy, going to the big sort of events. I'm actually, hopefully, this June, July, looking to basically become accredited as a CISP, which is a higher tiered, globally recognized sort of accreditation in the cybersecurity industry. So it's that constant evolution. Like, we are saying that we're good at cybersecurity, etc. We need to keep on top of that knowledge and, be certified to a certain degree, because everyone's talking about cybersecurity or jumping on it and saying they're experts, etc. There's no one an expert really in the true sense, because we're all learning. Yeah. We're all growing.
Yeah. I'm just going to ask you one last question, Usman, before you go. There was something you touched on earlier as well about how Staffordshire is really important for yourself. You've been born and bred here, you've lived here, you've got a business here, you've grown your business by being based in the area.
Sure.
But how important really is it from your point of view in not only growing a business but collaborating with other businesses within within Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent?
Yeah, I think collaboration is like such a. We talk about cybersecurity. I talk everything that we do is like C's. Maybe we're missing that. So we talk about cybersecurity. We talk about basically compliance. Then we talk about continuity, etc. But I think you touched on something really important there. The collaboration is such a big thing. The importance of working together. You're basically helping not only other people, but you're helping yourselves as well, like from a collaborative point, because we want to be successful together. Yeah. There's no point climbing a mountain all alone and then having this beautiful view and then not be able to share it with people, that sort of scenario. So collaboration is about that shared success, shared knowledge, because if I have knowledge and I don't transfer it to you and it stays with me, what benefit is that knowledge?
Yeah.
Really. So collaboration is, again, learning from other people. Yeah. And then that basic collaboration tends to basically, organically grow, where people then start, either referring you because you're the expert in that field. And if you're not an expert in a certain field, you start collaboration and referring to them. And it just helps grow that sort of blossoming of the garden, so to speak. And the more, obviously, I've recently joined the Staffordshire Chambers, as you know, after a couple of years, not been away from it. I used to be a social butterfly before in terms of, everywhere and here and there, everywhere. I've not had the opportunity to do that. So coming back into the chambers, I'm hopefully going to be able to see the benefits of what collaboration means again locally, and reinvigorate it. I think there's so many really cool people in the whole of Staffordshire, Stoke-on-Trent, entrepreneurial, businesses that basically don't shout out about themselves enough. But the next generation, it's so important for them as well. Yeah. Because why should they have to look to jobs in places like London or Birmingham or Leeds or even out of the country, when we can create this incubator here and that success stories here where these people, the younger generation basically can aspire to join companies like, whether it's my company or all these other successful businesses, which again helps that whole talent pool, etc. Because we've got so much talent in Staffordshire as well.
Definitely. Usman, thank you so much for joining us.
Did I talk too much? Sorry.
You were absolutely fantastic. That's Usman Shah from the Abzorbed Group here on Business Spotlight with me, Sonya Farrell.
Business Spotlight, shining a light on our local business community. Brought to you by Cross Rhythms and Baba Baboon.